Welcome to Wellness Spring, where we cut through health confusion with transformative insights from leading experts. In today's episode, join us for an extraordinary journey into the world of farming and environmental stewardship with Rachel Ward, acclaimed actress, director, and now a pioneering farmer. I recently had the honor of visiting Rachel on her farm, witnessing firsthand the remarkable work she has accomplished since her documentary, Rachel's Farm, captivated audiences worldwide. From the moment I set foot on her land, I was struck by Rachel's passion, dedication, and the profound impact she's making in the realm of sustainable farming and organic food. During my tour, I was blessed to witness the beauty of new life on the farm, including a tender moment with a newly born calf surrounded by its watchful and protective mother. Rachel is not just a farmer, she's a beacon of inspiration for women in agriculture everywhere. Join us as we delve into Rachel's inspiring journey, her commitment shaping a brighter future for farming, humanity, and our planet. So, Rachel, welcome to Wellness Spring. I'm so delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for showing us around your lovely property so we could see what advancements and developments that have been done.
Don't forget to leave your email so that I can send the bill for the carburetor.
Definitely.
What do you think that was? That was a big bump, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think we're okay. If it starts to leak, I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
For the listeners, we've just been on the tour, as you know, and in the film Rachel's Farm, it was hilarious because your partner at the time, your business partner, Mick Green, he didn't like you driving anything. And as we got in the car, I was thinking, this is going to be interesting, especially when I didn't expect it to be so hilly. And then when we seen all the Cisteria
grass.
The grass was taller than the car, and we were driving through and we came to this gully and she had to accelerate, and next minute it was like, woo, spinning around. And
after a big bump underneath.
Yes.
Well, I would say my driving was optimal at that under those conditions.
It's very good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. It was very good.
Yes. So I would like to know, as a director and actress, you've ventured into the realm far removed from the spotlight with Rachel's Farm. How has this experience reshaped your perspective on storytelling and the power of film for the medium for change?
How is storytelling is the medium for change. So luckily I happen to be in the area which does, if you do have something to say, I do have skills in that area as a filmmaker. So, and that was one of the things that really empowered me when I was in a sort of moment of crisis, when I just went, we're all going to hell in a handbasket, and I felt very powerless to affect any change. One of the things I realized that as a filmmaker, if I kicked myself up the bum and made a documentary about this wonderful new sort of paradigm of farming, which is regenerative farming, that I could reach people, and I could also reach people because I was a farmer, and little did I know at the beginning that farming had been, quite responsible. I'm being kind here, or responsible for a lot of the environmental damage that we have that has occurred in this country, and so we were also in a great position to rectify that damage as farmers, and particularly through regenerative farming. And thirdly, as a consumer, I was empowered as a consumer because I realized that I really had to consider more than taste and convenience. I had to get political about the food I ate and what I purchased. And I didn't really think there was any other way to really change where we are headed, which is into a big anthill if we just do not demand change from sort of corporate masters, I suppose, and those that are holding the whole sort of food supply chain to ransom, and farmers to ransom. So I figured that actually I was empowered quite nicely as a filmmaker, particularly.
You certainly did, and I think any woman especially watching the film, because you took over the role of Normie, the farmhand, and you had to learn everything from scratch, and it was really amazing to watch you in action. And especially today as well, we've been out there with the cows and opening and closing the gates and listening to your stories that you have to do. So what do you think, what tips could you give to women who want to start out as a farmer or existing farmers? How can they play a role to make changes happen from soil to plate, for example?
Well, I guess when it comes to women, it's just believing there is a role for you and that you're absolutely as entitled to that role as the men are. It's like any gender issues, isn't it? I mean, I've been in the entertainment industry my whole life, and I know what those those gender handicaps wrought and continue to do so. It's been extremely difficult in the entertainment industry, and I've definitely fought for and pushed for women to participate more in that area. So when it came to farming, I wasn't someone who was interested in doing the books. No one would want me to do their books, I can tell you. And other, the sort of things that, I mean, obviously I'm past the age of having kids and, doing all the child rearing stuff, but generally that's women. And the men, to me, seem to be having a lot of the fun and a lot of the responsibility. But it seemed to me, it was just much more attractive for me to be on the farm and in nature and on the land and on the tractor and making those management decisions. So I think sometimes it's just about the ones that have gone before you, looking at the women who have gone before me and are doing it. And I saw a lot of them actually in the regenerative space who were completely able to do it and I think wanted to do it. I don't know if women wanted to particularly be rolling barrels of chemicals around and, changing the implements on the tractor. And I don't know, it just seemed to be part of our remit, was it? It just was always a man's domain. And I think like everything out there, it's changing and women are realizing, hey, I can drive a tractor just as well as men. And I certainly won't take it away from men. The strength in a man's hand, that's where I found my greatest handicap, is my hands aren't strong enough. There's a lot of things that are very tight and like just getting the, like the slasher off the ball bearing of the tractor and those sorts of things and just sort of moving things around. I don't have the strength in my fingers very often, I have to say, to, a male farmhand I might be working with. I haven't got the strength to do this. But most of the other things, it's just a question of confidence that I can do this as well as you can. And also I think, there's a great value for women in the cattle yards and the livestock yards. I think we have maybe a slightly gentler approach. Maybe we're just slightly more gentle with the animals. I don't know. I'm sure there's some brutish women out there as well. But I do tend to, I don't like a lot of shouting in the yards. And obviously, one wants, I love the way I say that. I was shouting at my cows only yesterday when they were driving me mad. I just couldn't get them into the next field. And I was running around for about an hour trying to get them in. And at the end, I had my tester, that's right, my fence tester in my hand. And I just remember throwing it and swearing at these cattle. So I take that back. women can be bad yellers as well. Anyway, generally, I'm sure most of them are kind of more patient and gentle in the yards. And as we've seen in some, horrific videos where we've seen the brutality that can go on in some of these yards with animals.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I would like to think that women have a more considerate approach, but not always, as I proved yesterday.
Yeah, you covered a lot there, and I think in our age, when we were grown up, you would probably have been classified as a tomboy, and jumping around and getting your hands dirty and things like that, going for it. Whereas a lot of young girls were told, you can't do that, don't jump in the pedals, don't do this, don't do that. Whereas now with the changing world, women are playing, from school age, playing football and rugby and, so,
huge changes, huge liberation for women.
Yeah.
Not to have to, not to be subjected to those ridiculous restrictions. Don't think I was so much, actually.
Right.
My mum was very much someone who had dirt under her fingernails and gotten in the garden, and she didn't practice much of that herself, that ladylike behaviour herself. So I think she was a good influence in that respect. And I grew up in the country, and I grew up riding horses. So I think, I'm not scared of nature, of the country, of country rules. And, Brian grew up in my husband grew up in the suburbs, and he's much more tentative about the country than I am. And I think that's just growing up in it and feeling comfortable with it and having reckoned with it from early age. So it's a great advantage to have grown up a country girl, really. I know that when my kids brought kids here from the city, they would be really sissy about getting in the dam because of the, whatever might be in the dam. Whereas my kids were, in and out. And I remember once my daughter was on the side of the dam, and a snake came out of the dam and just ran over her body and out the other side, and it was gone before she realised what had actually happened. But those are the sort of things that I guess my kids embrace rather than, and I certainly did, rather than be scared of.
Yeah. Wow. I think most people would normally be scared of the snakes.
Yeah.
And,
true. But anyway, it just proves that usually they're more scared of you than they are, than we are of them.
Yeah. So talking about your daughters, like I know one of them has started the soil to plate business, and in the documentary you said she had 7 farms, including your own.
Yeah, that sort of evolved quite a lot. She now has a business of ready meals, and all of her ingredients are regenerative or organic. So she's the first ready meal company in Australia that only uses ingredients that are regenerative and organic and gluten free. Wow. And she's called the Good Farm Shop.
Fantastic. So we'll all look at it.
It is growing so incredibly. There is such a desire for people to know that their food have no nasties in them and that they are doing right by the land and their health. That is catching fire, I think. And so I think it's gone beyond their expectations of how much of a market there is for that.
And you talked about growing up with the land, and you had a aha moment, with your reconnection to the land, if you want. So can you delve in a bit deeper about that? And, does that affect like your children, for example? Do you think that's why they're more connected and doing these wonderful things with the food?
Well, for me, it was about searching for a sense of belonging. And I think if you live in a country that you haven't grown up in, you're always searching for true belonging, for a deep connection. And it's, I feel my connection that I had as an English girl was beyond my experience. I feel that it's in your DNA. It goes way back generations. I mean, I just cannot apply my attachment to England the deepness of my attachment to England just solely on the number of years I lived there, because I was gone by the time I was 18, and I've lived here nearly 43 years now, and I'm still very divided, even though I've lived here much longer than I have in England. So, and it definitely was for me about becoming attached to land that really helped me to connect to Australia. And so I think as a city girl and someone in the entertainment business, I just didn't feel that sense of connection that I now do. I've had the farm for a long time, but I have only been a farmer for the past 3 years. And what that demands of you, that connection that it demands of you, and that absorption and noting of what is going on, listening to nature and watching, taking notes really on how this paddock compared to that paddock, how that cow compared to that, why, when, wherefore, and all of those sort of things. It's like anything. It's where your interest rewards grow, belonging grows. Everything grows around it. So when my focus turned to the farm, it was infinitely engaging and infinitely connected me.
Yeah, your documentary really showed that. And I'm just thinking, because in the farm you're very open and honest, and you go through about the finance and how heavy that is. And it would have been heartbreaking, especially for Mick, when you had to let Normie go. And on our journey around your farm today, you shared that now it's only you as solo.
No, not solo. I mean, I'm still a farmhand.
Yeah.
I have a woman farm manager now, a female farm manager, who has a farm down the road.
Yeah.
And who practices pretty much the same way as I farm. And she's always been a farmer, so she has many years on me. And there are certain things that I just need guidance on still. I mean, I would say that it's still early days, and farmers are steeped in skills that I absolutely do not have at the moment. I mean, they have to be electricians, plumbers, vets, naturalists, botanists, there's mechanics. There are so many skills that you have to have as a farmer that most farmers learn from their fathers. To go into this as an adult, there's a huge amount of training that goes on. But there is also a huge amount of help out there. And I think that it's very often, particularly in the regenerative movement, a huge amount of support for each other and helping. There's a lot of stuff online that helps, and it's trial by error too. You just got to have those 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, or some people say 20 years for you to catch up to speed and to sort of really. And obviously, like in any career, some are better than others. Some of them some people have a natural affinity to it, and some people always struggle with it. But the thing about it's interesting being in the entertainment industry and then becoming a farmer, because in the entertainment industry, if you do not come up to scratch, my God, you hear about it. I mean, we have something called critics that tell us whether we are performing well or badly or differently or whatever, and constantly judging us. Farmers are never judged. I mean, their banks may judge them, but you're not judged if you're a bad farmer. There's a lot of farmers that can get away with being pretty bad farmers, and when I say bad farmers, I mean farmers that are, exploiting their land and not looking after their animals right, and they can get away with it forever. Who's going to judge them? Who's going to say, sorry, no, you might get food on your table, but at the cost of destroying your land and impacting maybe not your health, but certainly the animals that you are selling and the people who are going to eat them.
Exactly. And there's a lot of that around, as we discussed earlier, with the heavy chemicals and the pressure on many farmers to use the chemicals. And as you mentioned in the documentary as well, it does cost money to change. And you're fortunate because you've got, another income outside of this if you can turn to. But, the average farmer is struggling from year to year to make it happen. And then, there's so many ignorant people that don't realize just by buying cheap food, what are you doing to your health? Because you're eating all those chemicals. So how do you think we could get that message out to the world? Because it is a global problem.
Yeah, it's definitely, I suppose, pejorative to call people ignorant, but I certainly was ignorant, so I put myself in that basket. I was ignorant until about 3 years ago, when I started to actually really look into where my food was coming from, and when I began to understand what was in my food and how farmers, were forced into the situation of economies of scale and mass production, monocultures, and how much they were encouraged and trained to use the number of herbicides and pesticides and chemical fertilizers that, and they utterly believed that it was not harming themselves, their customers, or their land. I don't know how they've been managed to be convinced of that, because you only have to see the people who are putting on these chemicals, that they are covered from head to toe in protective gear. So if it's harmless, why are they wearing all this protective gear? And they look like Martians when they're applying all of this, the herbicides and pesticides. So, where is it going when it gets sprayed on? Yes, it may die to a certain level, but a lot of it is leached into the water table. A lot of it goes into the water table. A lot of the collapse of the water systems feeding out from the land, are not what they were. And I think that's been proved over and over, that we've got, Normie was one of the people that told me the stories. He grew up here, and he says the difference in the rivers from when he was a child, the amount of fish and the clarity of the water, and the lack of damage on the banks has changed so much since he was a boy. And so when you listen to those stories over and over again, you kind of go, well, it's a great privilege, because actually I'm able to be less ignorant these days about what is going on in order to get that food cheaper and cheaper. And it is economies of scale. It's mass corporate monocultural farming. It's clearing land, which then means that the water comes racing down those rivers, bursts the banks. It's a lot of urea that's put on the land that then goes into the rivers. It's a multitude of things. And organisations like Landcare are doing a great job in trying to reverse that and making sure that we've got stability on the river banks and that there's less clearing upstream and all of that. But still, we've got a long way to go to get it back to how it was. We're very divided between the country and the city. Our preoccupations are very different.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. It's just not in their day-to-day lives. We're so cut off, really, now from our farmers, from our landscapes. People stay in the city, they don't really understand what's going on outside, they just know that their food arrives, and what really is making them be interested in anything about where their food arrives. And, you say that, I'm in a position where I don't have to about the farm making an income, and that's true. And I feel, as a result, more responsible for getting it right than I would if I was, entirely relying on the farm as an income, because I'm one of the lucky ones. I can afford to take some of the risks and fail. And I think the more of us that can do that should be doing that. There's no excuse for us not to be doing it. I understand it when people are having a hard time adding up, their budgets as it is, to then take on a different way of farming and start all over again. It's daunting. And it is incumbent upon those of us who actually do have outside incomes that we're not going to fall in a heap if it fails.
Yeah.
And, I know that it won't fail because I've seen too many who have gone before me, who have been, who have been the champions, who have been the early adopters.
Yeah.
I can see their farms and I can see their production, and that once they've got a hang of it, that they really can make, they can do okay. But what we really do have to change is this. We have to get much more rebellious about the food we buy. And we have to really look at what's in that food. And we have to become more political, I think. We have to go beyond taste, convenience. We have to go, if we want to have healthy landscapes, if we want to have healthy rivers, if we want to have healthy bodies, we really have to pay attention to how our food is produced. And it's not that hard, really. I mean, labels are, God knows there's a million labels out there, but there are a lot of people out there, small farmers who are offering paddock to plate businesses. There's a big mapping thing called the Sustainable Table, which you can go on and you can find, your area and what is available to you in that area.
Yeah.
And we need to be buying much more directly from the farmer, because there are so many financial shenanigans that are going on in the food chain that is making the food way more expensive than it used to be, and farmers, their income has not really changed in 15 years. So they have not their prices, they're paying more for their food and they're getting less for what they produce, and they are certainly not getting. It's not them who are responsible for the price of food going up. It's all of it's financial markets, and it's the change in the retailers, who are now far more interested in protecting shareholders than they are their customers and their farmers.
That's really sad to hear.
Yeah, it's a fact, and we can change it. In Europe, they're getting on their tractors and they're dumping manure at their government's feet. Nick Minchin in the Green Party is trying to bring a bill to the Senate that will break up the power of these small retail corporates. Labour Party is not supporting it, so it will not get through. Yeah. But if we want to see change, we have to take it into our own hands, and we have to support those people who are supplying us with the best kind of food. And it's just a question of making a bit more effort, effort to find it, an effort to buy it, and necessarily to change your taste, maybe. I mean, I know that when it comes to grain-fed beef and grass-fed beef, the grain-fed beef may be a bit tenderer, and the grain-fed generally comes from feedlots where you've got these, cattle kept, a lot of it for their lives, that is in completely unnatural conditions, and you've got the grass-fed, grass-finished cattle that have bucolic lives on the grass until they have their final day. And what is the difference in the taste? Well, some would say that the grain-fed is tenderer, but if you want taste, if you want flavour, if you want to taste the landscape, the grass, the natural flavours, if you want to taste that, you go for grass finished every time.
Yeah. I think it was Aristotle who said, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food.
Okay, that's good.
And when we think about things like, for the wealthy, but it doesn't matter, if you've got a Ferrari, you're going to put the best fuel in that Ferrari. Mm-hmm. So if we all start thinking of our bodies as temples and put in the best food inside us, that we can be the best version of ourselves, and then we get away from the sick, dis-ease society and bring it back to a healthcare society, because at the moment, everybody is getting sick from something.
Yeah, I mean, my husband would say, but we're living longer. We might be living longer, but are we living, is that the kind of life we want if we're, sick, endlessly chewing down our medicines and, being kept alive forever in nursing homes. Yeah, it's not the kind I'd rather go a bit earlier and go well. So it seems like such a no-brainer that to eat healthy makes you healthy.
Yeah.
And I find it really hard to get into the mindset of those. Yes, people would say, we can't afford to eat better. But in the 60s, we were spending 60% of our income on our food. Now we spend 3% of our income on food. So that is just how we've been given so many options, so many consumer options, holidays, technology, fast fashion. There are so many other things to spend our dollar on. That's what we're choosing to do. And we're choosing to buy the cheapest food so that we can afford all these other, in some cases luxuries, in some cases essentials. But I think we have to look at the proportion of our income that we are now spending on food compared to where we were, and what that is doing to our health and to our landscapes and to the animals that we are eating.
Yeah, and when we talk about our health, we have to think of our whole health, our mental health. Definitely has become more public awareness to it since COVID lockdown, and people stuck on their phones looking at their likes on social media and so forth. But I'm not sure if you're aware, Rachel, but every 10 days a farmer is committing suicide. I'm just trying to think aloud, what could that be? What's contributing to that?
I think that they're not able to make ends meet, and they cannot envision a life without their farms. That's all they know. That's where they want to be, and God, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
And if you can't be there, and the bank is taking everything, and you haven't made it, been able to make ends meet, and what is going on, as we've already spoken about, it's so hard, particularly for small farmers, to keep. To make a livelihood, and they can't conceive of any other life, and they've obviously invested so much into that, and that's why it has to change. That's why it has to become political. We can't afford to just be casual about it anymore. And a lot of people will, raise up and say, I don't want to be political. I'm not political. Well, say bye-bye to the things that you have taken for granted and that you know and love. I mean, we are all going to forget how good food tastes. We are all going to forget what it was like once to have a healthy, strong body. And we're all going to forget what it was like to have, beautiful, pristine, crystal clear waterways. We're going to forget, and it's just going to be, it's what motivated me. I don't want that for my grandchildren either. Certainly don't want it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about aging, and as I mentioned earlier, I belong to Silver Sirens, and they talk about redefining aging because we are living longer, like you said. So what would your key tip be to women? Because obviously you're super active. It's like a big workout, just trying to maintain your farm. But what tips would you say to people to stay healthy in general? I
mean, I'm no paragon of health. I don't go to the gym. I don't ever want to go to the gym. I'm lucky I have a farm and I can run around after my cows and get out there. A lot of people aren't that lucky. I think, obviously, people live in the city, they have no choice but to go to the gym. But I think that if they get into the habit of eating better and making that choice, you make a choice, you make a political choice every time you take out that dollar and buy some food. You can either buy, sugar-filled, corporate, manufactured stuff. Or you can buy true food. True, fresh food. And I guess I didn't really know that till very recently as well. And I've never been particularly unhealthy, but I've certainly understood that is definitely the way to better health.
Great. I always ask my guests, if there was one thing you could do to change the world, what would it be?
I'm doing it.
Yay! And I just want to thank you for giving up your precious time and being the shining light that you are for all of humanity, you know, with your work on the film.
Oh, stop. We're all having a go. You're having a go. I'm having a go. You know, there's no, you know, a hell of a lot of people are having a go. I certainly don't deserve any elevation, but yeah, we can't give up, can we?
We can't.
No, we can't give up. No, and particularly, you know, as we get older, we have the, I mean, I found I've got the time to invest in things that are, you know, going to be, that my grandchildren will reap the rewards of, not necessarily myself, but, you know, so, yeah, we've got to keep steering in the right direction, haven't we?
Yeah, and...
I mean, you know, everybody has a different right direction. This happens to be my right direction, and it sounds like it's your direction too. But I can't speak for everyone, and neither can any of us, so... Yeah.
And for me, just sitting here now on your veranda, looking at the beautiful trees and hearing the birds, and it's just so calming and just got that lovely inner peace and glow.
Yeah, it's peaceful. Yeah, definitely that. I'm lucky, very lucky.
So, keep shining. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I have done recently, or I'm about to start, is a paddock to plate business of my own. And it's called rachelsfarm.com.au, and I've joined forces with Bellingen Beef, so we are basically serving the mid-north coast. So if this all makes sense to you, get online and order up your 12 kilo boxes or your 5 kilo boxes, and you will get a delicious assortment of whatever you desire.